Salute to you all. The brave never fall. Self-love through freedom and connection. So feel free to connect to the brave never fall on these social media platforms. If you find anything of value in this following podcast, hit that like button, subscribe and share, and support the brave and bold tribe growing one purposeful soul at a time. How are you feeling? Take a moment to do a self-check-in for yourself. How are you feeling mentally? How are you feeling emotionally? How are you feeling physically? How are you feeling spiritually? Are you feeling balanced? Are you still journeying on an intentional, purposeful path? How are you feeling? Balancing yourself is a healthy, daily practice that will reliably keep you in harmony with your entire mind, body, heart, and soul. Clear your mind. Take a moment of silence for yourself. Right now, in the moment. You are here now. How are you feeling? What's done is done. Time to face the reality of what is here and now. We can always get into a place in life where we feel the things that have happened to us is the end game. It is the conclusion of a development, the conclusion of a paradigm, a conclusion of a crossroads event where you make a decision and now that decision has been made and there's nothing you can do about it. If we know anything about life, we know that there is no end. That regardless of what road you come to, even if it's a path that seems like it has a stop sign at the end of it, just because there's a stop sign doesn't mean you always have to obey the sign that's in front of you. Anybody who drives a car, we know that there are times where we feel like stopping when that light turns red, and sometimes we say, screw it, close enough, I'm going straight through it. I got someplace to go. That's someplace I need to be. I'm late. I should have been there already. There is no stop sign in your life. There's no stop sign that says just because some event happened, some relationship ended, some opportunity failed, some disappointment crept into your life, that doesn't mean that it's time to give up. Quite the contrary. It's time to start. It's time to keep going. It's time to have a little bit more focus, a little more attention to detail, a little more discipline, a little bit more of you. What you bring to the table, who you are. What are the things that makes you you? Those things is what's going to keep you going forward. If you are void of the things that make you you, it'll give you a chance to pause. But pausing does not mean inevitability. It doesn't mean that that's all there is. Pausing just means a little break, a little time to think, reevaluate. But the goal is to keep moving. And as long as you keep moving, no matter what happens, you're already meeting your goal. Consequence of choice is a vital part of life. Without it, we lose perspective, boundaries, meaning, and the necessary bravery and fear to face the trials of life. Think too far ahead and we lose perspective. Don't think enough far ahead and we fail to have any perspective at all in life. Accepting the consequences of our actions is what makes every decision important. And to a certain extent, every decision you make is essentially life-changing. Although on different spectrums of magnitude, these decisions affect your life nonetheless. Accountability, responsibility, and ownership of those decisions you make and the consequences you are ultimately creating will empower you to trust yourself more in every situation where the outcome is impactfully life-changing. Power is accepting bravery and fear simultaneously in life and adding it to purpose. Fear can be just as motivating as bravery. Without fear, we would never be safe. We would lack the proper understanding and perspective of what actually keeps us from harm and what doesn't. Without fear, we would never drive a vehicle safely. Fear of injuring others and injuring ourselves forces us to be as safe as possible. Without fear, we would take unnecessary risks, make decisions that would end our lives, or unfairly damage the lives of others. Bravery is facing those fears, accepting the consequences, acknowledging our flaws, all the while moving forward as safe as possible, yet ready to face and overcome anything, any place, and anyone. We are here now. And there's no better time than now to challenge yourself to be more, achieve more, and grow beyond the current versions of ourselves. Discipline to the process of life is equal to the dedication and commitment we have to ourselves to face our fears and use fear as a form of bravery when we face them. Life. Episode 9, The Dust Has Begun to Fall. One of the best things that I personally love about life is that if you are looking for an opportunity to grow, you really can find it in any part of the day. Any part of your day that you have, especially if you do things that are different each day. Like not just sit around the house and do the same things every single day, but if you can add in a little bit of this and a little bit of that each and every day, you come up with something that I think that's really important in life. Variety. And variety, to a certain extent, everything's on a spectrum. Everything has a spectrum. So variety, what I think one of the sayings goes is variety is the spice of life. There's a spectrum there. It's a little bit of variety and a lot of variety. Some people would say if you have a little bit of variety, then you have some interests. You have a couple of hobbies. A lot of variety, maybe you're doing too much and now you're spreading yourself too thin, and they call you the infamous, you're not a master of anything. You're a master. You're just basically doing a little bit of everything, sprinkling in everything, trying everything, but you never master anything. You never take one of those things and just run with it. And the perspective of others, again, that's their perspective. It is not our business to care about what other people perceive our lives should be as far as their terms and what they feel like other people should do in their lives. Because no one can speak on you. Because even if they understood your mind, they understood your heart, and they understood your body, there's one thing they would never understand, and that is your soul. Because we as individuals don't even really understand our souls ourselves. There's a whole separate conversation about what is consciousness. Is consciousness linked to the soul itself? And if that's the case, then we don't know shit about our soul, because we don't know anything about consciousness. What is the difference between someone in a coma and someone sleeping? Ultimately, what is the difference between someone being dead, someone in a coma, and someone sleeping? Ultimately, we don't know. We don't know what's beyond death. We have an idea. We can hope and pray that there is something beyond our last breath, but we don't know that. So let's stick with what we do know. What we do know is that we have the opportunity every day to do pretty much whatever we want in all the spectrums of life. Consequences. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie John Wick. There's 3 films: John Wick, John Wick 2, John Wick 3, Parabellum. I'm a huge John Wick fan. In John Wick 3, the theme of John Wick 3 is consequences. And they actually say this word a lot in that film. John Wick himself has done things in the prior 2 films that in a short amount of time, these are 3 films, but they happen in a very short amount of time, literally in days. Even though these are films that have come out over the last few years, the films themselves, the story themselves happens in days. And the choices that John Wick that John Wick makes in the films ultimately keeps leading him further and further down this chain of events that he never would have seen upon the events prior or at the beginning of the original John Wick film. And they say in John Wick 3 all the time, him and Halle Berry, who plays another character, it's about consequences. They say this word a lot, consequences. And it's just one word, consequences, period. Our life is about consequences. It's all about it. If you think about it, it's how you perceive everything that you do. Do you perceive everything you do as an action or a consequence of a prior action? Or an action you hadn't even done yet? We can visualize. We know what consequences are there if we project. If we say, okay, I'm going to get in my car today with no gas, and I'm going to drive I need to drive 15 miles, but I only have enough gas in my car to give me 10. I'm going to risk it. I think it may make it. You already know what the consequences of that is going to happen. You already know. You know what's going to happen. But some people still do it anyway. So this is where judgment comes in. People will look at you and say, why the hell did you do that? Now, this person in their rational mind might say, listen, I've done that plenty of times. Just this time, a little bit more traffic than I thought. I should have thought that out, whatever. Or someone might say, I didn't realize I didn't have that little gas in my car. I thought I would make it because I thought I had a half a tank. I didn't know I only had 5 more miles to go. It's a perception thing. It's all perspective and perception and choices and consequences. What happens when the consequences are starting to play out? When the dust is falling, you've done what you're going to do. You stirred up the pot. You've done everything you could do to make a situation happen for yourself. You have created a situation for yourself, and now you have to deal with it. You're in it. The dust is falling now. What do you do? What do you do? Is it a time for panic? Or is it a time for rational thinking? Is it a time for introspection? Is it a time for you to do your after action report and ask yourself a simple question? Is the current mess that I created for myself of my doing, or was it me reacting to something else that I had no control over? Or was it a combination of both? I think most people in most situations, we could probably find a combination. It's never one thing. If you ever find yourself in a situation there's only one problem, then you're not thinking deeply enough. There's always stuff. You can link all this stuff back like a family tree. There's always a course of things that happens. Again, go back to that John Wick. And if you haven't seen John Wick, I highly recommend it. It's awesome. If you don't, especially if you like bloody gun violence. I mean, it's not for everyone, but for me, I love it. But there's also a deeper story in that. Again, there's always layers to everything. And that John Wick story is always about consequences. It's about reaction and responding to things that are happening that you can never predict. The things that happen in those films to him and what he does to other characters. No one ever could predict these crazy scenarios that happen. And life is so much like that. We don't know what's going to happen. It's a chain of events. And it's happened before you were born. You are a consequence, whether good or bad, of things that you had nothing to do with before you were born. And think about that. You are a continuation of consequences that goes back generations. You're just a living manifestation of somebody else's consequences. Just think about that. You are a living manifestation of countless people's consequences and choices, or you wouldn't exist. You would not exist without the failings of some people, the achievements of one person, the relocation of a certain people, the stubbornness of one person, the greediness of these people, the pride of this person, all led to your birth. Think about that. It's powerful when you think about it that way. Your life is extremely powerful when you think about it that way, because it's not just about you. It's about everything that surrounds you. It's about everybody. When the dust is falling, when things are happening and the dust is shot up in the air and now it's starting to come down, what's happening now? Everything's in slow motion. You have time to think. What's going on? Think about that. Whatever you're doing is going to affect generations forward. Now, some people may say, I'm insignificant. There's no way my decision making can be that impactful where it will impact generations before them. You're thinking too big. You're thinking too grand. You're thinking too theatrical. You're thinking too much. You're putting too much drama into it. If you take all the drama out and the theatricality, basically every decision you make is influencing people you never met, you would never meet, because who you are, your DNA, who you are in this world is influencing and impacting everyone around you. You could at any point in time decide, hey, I'm going to go walk out somebody and punch them right in the face. That person gets punched in the face, they get put in the hospital. Who knows what the timeline that creates? It could create a whole chain of events. You not doing that is creating a timeline. Think about that. You not doing something is creating endless timelines. You simply not choosing to make a bad decision is creating timelines that don't exist, which is equally, if not more important, than creating timelines that do exist. The decisions you do make are just as much as important, if not more, than what you don't. And vice versa is how you perceive it, how you look at it. So what are we getting at here? We're breaking down consequence. We're breaking down choices. We're breaking down what does it ultimately mean when you're in a position where you feel like you have to make a decision that you know is life-changing, and are you ready and willing to accept the consequences of that choice, of that decision, of that action? And most people in this world don't take the simple time that it would take to just step back and say, I'm about to make an important decision. I need to think about this. And sometimes it takes you months to think about this. It's not a quick decision. The more impactful, the more you need to think about it. Now, there are situations where you need to be impactful and you need to make a decision quickly. That's when you have to trust yourself enough to make that decision. That's when you go back to, what am I standing on? My values, my morals, my principles. Have I done the work there? So I know I do have to make a decision. I have to make it quick. Not ideal for me. I'd rather have more time, but I don't have more time. I got to make this decision right now. I trust myself. I'm standing upon these values. I'm standing upon these morals. I'm standing upon these principles. And I will continue to stand upon them because I trust them. And if I don't trust myself, I make myself untrustworthy. When you stir the pot, you're brewing something up. You're brewing something up. And speaking of brewing, one of my favorite jazz albums of all time, one of my favorite musician of all time is Miles Davis. He has an album called Brew. I'll put a link in the description to this album if you ever want to listen to it. It's my favorite album. I love this album. Beautiful to listen to on CD or vinyl. I recommend it on vinyl. The remastered version is great, but we're not talking about that. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because Brew was when Miles Davis kind of completely made his transition from jazz into funk era. At the time, a lot of people, Miles Davis does this a lot. He was the master of genres. He would go to any genre and he would master that genre. If it was something that he wanted to do melodically on an album, he would master that. If it was funk, he would master that. If it was bebop, he would master that. He would master whatever genre would pop up. And when he moved over into funk, a lot of people thought he was nuts. He's over the hill. He's having a midlife crisis. What is he doing? He's a jazz musician. Why is he moving over to funk? He's using electric equipment. He's doing this. He's doing that. You want to know what the consequence of that was? He created, after already creating countless of other albums that are great in those particular genres, he moved into a genre where no one ever thought he would ever work in and made what is arguably the best funk album of all time, Brew. He allowed the people around him to shine. He got in his pocket and he played. Now, the consequence of that, he's prolonged his career. All the other jazz musicians who died of drugs, who died of practice of their lives and their bodies doing those heightened, during the avant-garde era and the bebop era and the pressures of the time to kind of stick to what you know, they died out. When nobody was showing up anymore, they got depressed. They moved to drugs. They quit and go into another profession. Not Miles Davis. Miles Davis kept adapting to the times. He would not accept the fact that just because jazz was dying out and wasn't what it was when he was in his prime, doesn't mean he couldn't still pick up his horn and play and be impactful doing that. So he moved into the funk. He moved in what is popular. He did this over and over again. He reinvented himself with every new era that came in. And he did it brilliantly. And he redefined what it was to be a musician, not a trumpet player. He was a musician. And I bring that up because that album, Brew, if you listen to it, you can hear all of the intricacies of him literally changing the way jazz players would approach music. And not only that, anybody who is creative, to reinvent yourself is what you're looking for. We all get stale. And it's not about, creativity has nothing to do with the arts. It doesn't always have to be fine arts. You can be creative in anything you do. Any hobby that you have, you can be creative in. Creative just means you're exploring, you're adapting, you're evolving in what you do. You want to be better than you were the day before. And you should always want to be better than the day you were before. Than you were the day before. And that's why I love that album, because he could have fizzled out and died out, but he created something that's perfect with a perfect name, Brew. You're brewing up something new, something creative, something ambitious, but you're not doing it because you think you're going to fail. You're doing it because you know you're going to succeed. Because taking the chance on anything, guess what you're doing? You're adding in something new. What Miles Davis knew was staying in your lane and just doing what everybody expects you to do doesn't always work, even though it can be lucrative, it can be safe. What was more important to him is that his name did get associated with all those people, quote unquote, who died out. He wanted to keep playing. He was music. He wanted to keep moving forward. And I respect that a lot. And I think we can all take that in our lives. We can keep doing the things that are safe. We can keep doing the things that are quote unquote normal. We can keep doing the things that everybody expects us to do. But if you're going to do that, you have to keep accepting the fact that you're limiting yourself. What made Miles Davis great was that he always knew there was more. Up until his dying day, he never stopped. He just kept going and 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 reinventing himself over and over and over again. And he never, ever, ever sold out who he was, because that is who he was. He didn't have the pressures of other people saying, I'm just this genre of player. I'm just this. I'm just that. I'm all of it. I'm music. I'll do whatever the hell it is I want to do, because this is me. Once the dust settled, there's not a person on this planet you can ask, who's Miles Davis, and they don't know who he is. He didn't do that because he didn't take risks. He didn't do that because he was scared of the consequences. He did it because he did it powerfully, because he wanted to do it for himself, and he knew what he can do. And he didn't listen to the outside noise. He didn't accept the fact that people thought that he would fail. He just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. He wasn't one of the best trumpet players of all time. He wasn't one of the best composers of all time. What he was is that he was an innovator. He was a forward thinker. And that's what made him brilliant. If we accept the fact that we are at a baseline, and then we can move up from that baseline and we hit a ceiling, if we accept that, well, that's all that we have. That's all there is. And there's no more to talk about. There's no more to do. There's no more to develop. If we get to that point, then we are truly hopeless as an individual. If you get to a point where you feel like you can see the floor and see the ceiling, that's too close. You're too enclosed. You're more than that. Far more than that. Life will continue to bring us these opportunities in a way where we have to respond. We'll be responding to people, places, and things. We will have to find in ourselves what it is that defines us. And once we have that definition, we can start looking at that floor and that ceiling, and we can say, this is going to be easy to bust through. And we have to. Are we ready to face the choices and the consequences of the choices? Are we ready for that? We can go a lifetime of avoiding consequences. We can make up in our minds all of the things that could happen because of a particular choice we want to make, a particular decision that we've already made. And we can have fear injected into us like venom, like a poison. And it will literally petrify you. It will stop you from being able to perform. And it's almost as if we do this ourselves. Everybody does this. We do this to ourselves. If we experience something before in our lifetimes and we are brought back to that, we're triggered. We think to ourselves, this feeling can never happen to me again. I felt like this happened because I made this choice, and I'm never doing that again. What we fail to do is examine what it was that made us so fearful of going back to that decision again. Because a lot of times when you go back and take a look at a decision you made, you find after after a period of time where you have a little more knowledge and you've talked to some different people and you've had time to detach emotionally from that particular event, you find that a lot of things that you were afraid of that caused those consequences could have been avoided or couldn't have been avoided. But we don't filter through them. We don't go back and say, okay, whoa, that only happened because I did this one thing prior to that. If I had not done that, that would have worked out perfectly. We don't go back and check out what we've done and reevaluate. That's what the dust falling is all about. I picture it in slow motion. It gives you a chance before the dust hits the ground. When something happens and the world seems like it's turned upside down, before the dust settles, you have a little bit of time to say, what could I have done differently? That's that detachment. That's that window of time, that window of opportunity for you to evaluate and truly understand what it was that caused that particular consequence in your life. And if you really examine it, you'll get so many answers out of it, out of every situation. Just think about it. And we'll talk about this in a moment in the mission. But it's powerful when you can go back and look at certain things that you've done, certain situations with people, places, and things, and you go back and say, wow, if I had only known that one thing, that would have changed that outcome. Had I not said that to this person, that would have changed his outcome. I would have gotten exactly what I wanted. I would have succeeded. Or I would have failed. That's what life is all about. That's how you make those adjustments. It's taking your life not seriously to the point where you have a narcissism problem, but it's taking your life seriously enough where you say, I cannot allow myself to be afraid to make decisions that I made before, or to try something that I tried before and I failed at. I can't be afraid to revisit that. I can't be afraid to revisit that. I'll give you a prime example. When I was in high school, I will never forget this. Middle school. When I was in middle school, I will never forget this. We had the mile run, and it was outside, and we didn't have a track with like nice turf on it. It was just a gravel rock track. And I thought of every excuse I could think of. I might have been in 7th grade. I thought of every excuse I could think of to not run that mile that morning. I pretended to be sick. I pretended my shoes were broken. I thought of everything I could. And the reason why I didn't want to do it is because I knew I was too weak to run the entire mile. I knew I wouldn't make it. In my mind, I wasn't thinking, they don't care if you make it. They just want you to run it. They just want you to just run. All I had to do was go out and just run. That didn't go into my mind. The ego in me was like, if I don't be first, I suck. That's the mentality I had when I was a kid. If I'm not first, second or third, I suck. I can't be dead last. So I never wanted to run them. Fast forward into my 38 years old, and now running is my therapy. Running is my happy place. Running is what I do best physically. And now I run 13, 15 miles, and I can do that just as a light jog. I can go out. That's part of my workout. And it's a perception thing. I revisited that, and I wanted a challenge. I went back in my mind and said, when I had my awakening and I wanted to be better and I wanted to push myself physically, I said, what was the one thing you did when you were younger that you wish you could go back and correct and show people that, not that it matters, but it does in a way. Because for me at the time, it would have made a big difference. The shorter one that I didn't care about running the mile, that I could have ran it, and not only ran it, I would have ran it well. If I could go back and tell my 7th grade self, hey, let me show you something. Open up the box full of medals and say, look at all these miles you're going to put on your body at age 40. Run this 1 mile. I just, that, again, consequences, right? What if I had have been brave and ran it? I might have, who knows what my running career would have been like. But I didn't. So it's all about consequences. But that doesn't mean you don't have to just live in that moment. I revisited it and said, no, I want another shot at that running thing, because I always thought I could do well. I just was too scared to do it. Running, revisited it and said, now look at me. I'm a marathon runner, and it's my favorite thing to do. I always was a runner. And looking back on it, I was afraid to fail because there was a part of me that was afraid of the hard work, that was scared of the outcome, that was embarrassed of the consequences. However, I didn't even give myself an opportunity to do it. I just assumed all those things were going to happen, and I ended up doing nothing. It's too short to play basketball. It's too small to play football. So I did music. The one athletic thing that I could have done was run. The other thing athletically I could have done was boxing. I did box for a while. That wasn't my calling. Running has always been the one thing that I look back on and said, okay, that's the one thing I could have done. And that's one thing that I wanted to share with you, is that if there's something in your life that you did in your past that you gave up on, that doesn't seem like it's a part of your life because you left it in the past because it didn't work out for you, revisit it. See what's there. Open up the box again. Knock the dust off. And as the dust begins to fall, look into that box and pull out all the memories. Look at the things you might want to revisit. It's a long life. Even if it's 20 years, if you're only 20 years old and it was 10 years ago when you did something you were 10, it doesn't matter the time period. It could be 3 weeks ago. It doesn't matter. Revisit it. I do it all the time. Reinvent yourself. If it's something in the back of your mind, you say, I wish I had another crack at it. Damn it, do it. You owe it to yourself. Fuck the consequences. Get it done. Don't be afraid of your own past. It's gone. If you want to do it and it's calling to you, it's calling for a reason. You should listen to it. Trust yourself or you will make yourself untrustworthy. What's inside of you is passion, purpose, and fulfillment. That's what your body and your mind, your heart, and your soul is looking for. But if we can take all that and say, listen, this is all a shield combined. All those things are a shield against being afraid of consequences, being afraid to face our deepest fears, to go back and face the challenges that made us so damn disappointed and made us so miserable when we were younger. All the things that we create in our mind, all the demons and situations that are happening in the future, that it's nothing. It's all in our minds. We have to do the work to get past that. And the way we do that is we have to face these things. We have to identify and be aware of what it is that's making us afraid. What is it in our past that we're so afraid to go back and take another look at? What is it in the future that we're so afraid to meet if we take this certain path, if we do this certain thing? We need to know these things. They ease us once we know them. It brings us peace and contentment. It makes us bolder. It's about being brave. That's what the Brave Never Fall is all about. It's about facing your fears, overcoming them, and using them as an asset. Not as a device to make excuses and to drop your discipline at the first moment of trouble. We are here because we are to explore our lives. We are to expand and be better. And every choice we make, yes, it has consequences. That doesn't mean that we can't go back and change some things. It doesn't mean we can't go back and course correct. It doesn't mean we can't go back and reevaluate and redefine what those things could have been and bring them right here into the present. Your mission for today is simple. Think about anything in your past that you did. It doesn't matter. The past is the past. It could have happened 10 minutes ago. Could have happened 10 hours ago, 10 months ago, 10 years ago. Go back in your past. Is there anything that is sticking out in your mind? And I want you to think really deeply and hard about this. And journal it if you can. Write it down if you can, because writing it down makes it real. It brings it into the forefront, and it's something you can revisit, and you don't have to strain your brain so much. But think about it. What is there in your past that some memory you have, some situation, some relationship, where there's things that you know, had you've made a little tweak here, a different decision there, been a little braver here, maybe a little less bold there, something would have transpired and bloomed into something different that would have made your life easier, happier, more fulfilled, more full of purpose, peace and joy, contentment in the present today. It didn't happen, but if you had done this certain thing, had you not said this sentence, had you not married this person, had you not moved into this house, had you not taken this job, or had you done take this job, you didn't buy this dog, you didn't go to this church. What is it? What decision you made that you feel has a profound impact on your life that is not only affecting you in the present moment, but it also affects people around you that had nothing to do with that decision? Think about that. Find 1 or 2 examples. There's more than one. We all have more than one, so it's not just one. This should not be a hard exercise for you to find one of these examples. Well, the goal is to take this example and then what would you do differently? Reshape that memory. Reshape that situation. Reshape that relationship. What are the things you could have done differently? And really think about it. Write it down. Then apply it to who you are today. Use it. Write it down in a way where you can fall back on and say, if this happens again, this is what I'm going to do. This is your day. You are here now. These are your moments. You own them. You are brave, bold, powerful. You do believe in yourself. You know you have more in the tank. You know the glass is half full. There's still more room for improvement. There is no end. Believe, believe, believe in yourself. Trust yourself. Trust that you can do whatever it takes to accomplish whatever you want from life. You don't procrastinate. You don't embellish. You don't lie. You are true to yourself. Knowledge is in your mind. Peace is in your heart. Balance is in your body. Purpose is in your soul. You are greatness. The sky is not the limit. You have purpose, fulfilling, intentful purpose. You are here for a reason. You are unique. You are self-love, self-discipline, self-respect, self-control. You have self-awareness. You are joy, peace, happiness. You are freedom. And yet you are connected to every person, place, and thing in the universe. And if no one has told you this today, I love you. You deserve to hear that. Salute to you all. The brave never fall. Learn, laugh, and level up.